welcome to Lee Kernaghan. It's good to have you back.
Great to be with you, mate.
At Planet Undercover to talk about Planet Country, hey, the new album out there. And quite a long time in the making, huh? 2 years.
Yeah, well, it was supposed to come out in 2008, I was given that wonderful honour of the Australian of the Year award, which was it took blew me away. But I realised then that I couldn't continue on with making the album and touring and doing what I had to do. I had other duties and a role to fulfil. So I took pretty well a year off touring, but the good thing was that it was a real insight into what the beating heart of what was going on around rural Australia and regional Australia, and I came back with a whole lot of new ideas for the song, for the album. So the album that I would have released in 2008 would have been totally different to Planet Country.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Was it actually recorded or written?
It was pretty well written, but we didn't record any of those songs, except I think I Milk Cows. Yeah. That stayed.
Okay, we'll talk about that song a bit later on.
Yeah.
But actually getting that honour, as Australian of the Year, obviously did give you an insight into the Australian psyche that you wouldn't have had before.
Well, it did, because I travelled around the country going to drought-stricken communities, but we had family days out there, and where the whole community got together, and in some of those areas that have been battered by drought, just giving people a reason to get together and talk is really healing. So they were really important days, and a real privilege for me to be taken into people's lives the way they took me in.
Because that wasn't the first honour, wasn't it? It was a really big honour that happened for you back in the early 90s.
Which one?
The Order?
Oh, yes.
You've forgotten about that one already.
I was thinking, maybe it was a gold guitar or something. Yeah. It was good. But look, really, the thing that I've learnt, mate, and I'll be absolutely upfront and fair dinkum about this, there's so many people who work behind the scenes, and when you think about the volunteers and the firefighters and people who are working in little country towns helping elderly citizens and doing stuff like that and really going the extra mile, they deserve all these accolades, not the country singers and running around like I am.
Yeah. Looking back at the history, it's interesting looking at how the career of Lee Kernaghan came about, wasn't it? Because there was that talent quest that happened in the 80s, and then nothing for like this 10-year period.
Yeah.
Were you concerned about the career at that stage?
I was devastated. I won the Star Maker Award in 1982, which was the same one that Keith Urban won and James Blundell, and I think Gina Jeffries won it. So that was, fantastic, but nothing happened after that. The best thing that came out of it was that I signed a publishing deal, and my publisher sent me to Nashville, and I caught up with a bloke called Wally Wilson, the staff writer at Tree Publishing, and Bob Montgomery, who ran Tree Publishing, did some recording with me and took me under his wing, and they proceeded to teach me the craft of lyric writing. That's been a very important part of what I do over the years, I suppose. I've done over the years.
I guess in that gap, that 80s to 90s gap before Boys in the Bush came along and sort of changed history for you, but it got down to a real low, didn't it? I mean, you've talked about one show in particular where no one turned up.
Mate, it's burnt into my brain, the Carrier's Arms, Wodonga. I saw the ad was in the paper, so I've got no criticism against the hotel with the marketing. They got that right. And loaded in the gear and set up. It was just a solo sort of show. But by 8 o'clock, nobody had turned up. By 9, nobody had turned up. By 10:30, the publican said, "Lee, pack up, mate, you can go home."
Yeah, but I noticed where you'd stated previously, not even your mum turned up.
Oh, no one. No, not even my mates.
Was she meant to be turning up?
No. It might have been even more embarrassing if she'd turned up.
Yeah. So then, Boys in the Bush comes along. What a massive hit that is, and I guess it's one of those songs that can you leave that out of a set these days?
I think I've accidentally done it once, but no, it's really it's got to be in there. It's just one out of the bag. How it came about, Garth Porter, my record producer, said, "Lee, look, you've got these songs, but they're okay, but I want you to start writing songs about your life and where you come from and your own experiences and your mates and just your life. And I said, but I can give that a try, Garth, but I don't think anybody would be very interested in that. And he said, well, look, you go back to Albury and do some more work on that. So we did, and that's when Boys from the Bush was written, and the Outback Club and High Country. And it seemed as if that when Boys from the Bush was written, it almost like these doors just opened, and I thought, man, the possibilities here are endless. You know, to be able to write songs about people I know and experiences I've had, and you know, it was just a whole new world opened up.
Because it's quite amazing, isn't it? Because the Garth Porter relationship exists to this day, and Garth's very much part of the new album here.
Yeah.
But like if anybody had thought of taking a member of a pop, almost a glam pop band of the 70s, and teaming him with a country guy, and it becoming successful, you'd go, nah, never would have happened. Yeah. Was that a case of opposites attracting?
Well, no, not really, because Garth grew up on a dairy farm in New Zealand, so he, pretty strong country roots there. But he went down the pop road, and he has great sensibility in terms of what works in terms of songs and structure and making albums. So he's a wonderful producer, but I think of him as like the great saviour, the great white knight, because until Garth Porter came along, country music records in Australia were probably just, I guess, they didn't really have any traction with mainstream audiences, except for the odd big hit from Slim or Willow. But he came along and he started producing James Blundell, and man, did James Blundell kick down the doors. He kicked down those doors and opened up a whole new genre, really. Country music, Australian country music that was country, but it rocked, and the mainstream media loved it. And so it was like a renaissance for country music at that point.
Because how do you actually peg yourself? It's not country and western, it is country rock or
Yeah. I'll just call it country, But it's Australian music, what we do. We've got some of the greatest musicians in the world that play right here in this country, and I've found that more and more so as I've recorded in America. And to give you an example, Planet Country, the solo was played by Glenn Hanna out of Sydney, and when I sent it over to Nashville to do the overdubbing, we brought in the greatest guitar players on the planet and let them have a crack at outgunning Glenn Hanna on that guitar solo, and try as hard as they may, they couldn't pull the tone, and they just couldn't match it for the melodic and ripping approach that Glenn did. So fly the flag for Australia, it's a great...
So hard then for an Australian, particularly in the country area, and very few have done it. Keith, has been very, very successful in the United States. Yeah. But, it's sort of limited. We've got a lot of rock acts that have broken America, a lot of pop acts that have broken America. Why is it so difficult for country acts?
To break in America? Well, I think you've got to do what Keith did. You've not only do you have to be extremely talented, but you've got to be willing to move over there, pay your dues, because they really respect that. And I think you have to sort of absorb the culture, and become a part of the big family over there. And Keith did it, and what an incredible job he's done. It's just terrific.
Yeah. What about you? Have you had ambitions to sort of base yourselves over there for a number of years and try and do that?
Maybe when I was in my 20s, I thought about that. But I think when we started making albums like Three Chain Road and Hat Town and all that, I was making music about Australia, and I would have had to have changed all of that to fit into the American genre, because I think when country music really ignites, it's usually making a strong cultural connection. So lyrically, and it's just really the great hits of all time, like the big Slim hits and True Blue and all that. It's very culturally connected to this country, and that's where the huge record sales are, that's where it resonates in this country. But if I took that to America, they'd be asking me questions. So we don't get it. Like we recorded a song called Scars, and there's all these little subtleties. Dierks Bentley sang with me on it, and they said, "What do you mean stacked your bike? I've got a souvenir, on my leg the time I stacked my bike." They don't say stacked my bike. They say crashed my bike, and there's a whole lot of little things that work here but don't work there.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Dierks there, and what an amazing track that is. How did that come about that you got to perform with him?
Well, I recorded the overdubs for Planet Country at Station West Studios in Nashville, and this happens to be where Dierks Bentley works and writes, and what I did, it was kind of interesting. Rather than go over there, I would log on at 1 a.m. each night on my iMac computer, and we'd do the iChat. So the studio in Nashville had the iChat, and so it was we were video conferencing. I had the same speakers in my studio as they had in theirs, and I'd just sit in on the sessions, and they'd come in, the guitarists come in and say, "What do you want on this one, Lee?" or whatever, and it was just had all of these magical nights, just myself alone in the studio, and all through those midnight hours, all this incredible music was being made in Nashville, and I'm hearing it in Queensland.
Yeah.
So one night, a familiar face popped up on the screen, and it was Dierks, and he'd come in to have a listen to hear what was going on, and he loved what he was hearing, and I said, "But Dierks, it'll sound a lot better if you're on this as well." And so he agreed to sing with me on Scars.
Right. That's an amazing way to use technology, though, isn't it? I mean, 5 years ago that just wasn't possible.
Mate, the digital world is just incredible. It's revolutionised the way you make music now. So when it came to the mixing, Luke Wooten would get a mix up, and I'd kind of hear it, via the iChat, and but then he'd say, "Okay, I think we got it." And I'd say, "It's sounding good here, Luke," and he'd just drag the WAV file from his desktop onto my little inbox or whatever it was on my desktop, just drag it, and 2 minutes later I'm hearing the full mix from Nashville the way they're hearing it there. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah,
Just incredible.
Never need to leave home to record the next record, will we?
You don't,
Yeah.
Maybe I won't even have to go down to Sydney so much. I can leave these guys over here and just let them go for it. Then I'll just dial it in.
Yeah. What I love about the album lyrically is every single song is a story. Like you're obviously a storyteller by trade more so than a songwriter or a musician. I think the stories must come first, and then the songs are created afterwards. Is that sort of how it works?
Yeah. Well, what always comes first is the title, and one of those things I learned over there in Nashville when I was a little kid was the title is it. Once you've it, prove it, and you should be able to say what the song is all about in one sentence. So the titles really are the guts of the songs, and we have to try and create a song that will resonate, will move people. One thing that I always strive for, and sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't, but if you get the goosebump factor, ooh, this song is kind of working.
And you've said that every single line is something that you've either lived or believed in.
Well, very much so on this record. This record comes from deep down in the heart, soul, and it's pretty autobiographical in a lot of ways. But I believe in these songs and where they're coming from.
Yeah. And we were talking before about I Milk Cows, which is the additional song on the album, but one of my favourite tracks off the album. Yeah. And the guy who you met who just came out with that line, tell us the story of that night.
Well, I'd just done a show. It was on the Murray River, one of the clubs along there, and there was a bit of a tailgate party out in the car park afterwards, and I went out there and said g'day to everyone, and signed a few glove boxes and tailgates, and I was signing this bloke's ute, and I said, "Jono, you're a good bloke, mate. Tell us, what do you do for a living?" And he stuck out his hand. He said, "Lee, I milk cows." So I wrote that one straight away, and it was one of the first ones we wrote. on the album.
Yeah. Do you perform that live?
I've done it once in Darwin, but not the final version. We thought we'd had it, but we road tested it up there, and we did a little bit of rewriting. So I'll be doing it live, I reckon, on the 2010 tour.
When did that sort of get written along the way in relation to the other songs on the album?
I think it was one of the very first songs that were written. So back in probably early '98. It might have been even, 2007. I'm still lost in the 90s. 2007, and Garth was really concerned that it wasn't good enough to make it onto the album, and we were cutting it as a demo, and we'd never played it live before. But we had Mitch Farmer on the drums. I think Glenn Hanna was on electric, and I think it was Matt Scullion on another electric. And we started off at about, 120 beats per minute, and a milk cow and stuff. I said, "Come on, boys, let's go faster." And we just kept going faster and faster and faster, and pushed it to within an inch of its life. And we cut this little demo. And then later we tried to re-record it again, but we couldn't beat the demo. There was just something happened when we cut the demo. The magic was there, and so that's what made it onto the...
It's an incredible talent of just capturing a snapshot of a person's life, and I think People Like Us is another example of that on the album.
Well, I was up at the Songwriting Shack in Queensland, and we've been working on, when you go songwriting up there, people don't realise how hard you go. Like, you work an 18-hour day, and your mind you're just so buggered, because you're just constantly thinking, song titles, and as an artist, in your gut that if we don't have any hits on this record, you're gone. Like, it's all over. So I was feeling a bit fatigued, and I went and had a bit of a lay down, and while I'm laying down, I can sort of hear Garth and Matt Scullion playing away on the guitars, and they were working on this song, People Like Us. And anyway, so I got up and said, "No, not like that, like this." No, we mucked around with it a bit, and it snapped into place.
What about the title of Planet Country? When did that pop into your head?
That was up in Western Queensland. We were doing a fundraising show up there, a little town called Yarraka, and we went out there to raise money for a defibrillator, a piece of life-saving piece of medical equipment that the Bush Medical Clinic needed desperately. And population 27, 3,000 people turned up to the show. The little town had its first traffic jam in its entire history, and somebody said on the night, "Yarraka, centre of the universe," and the centre of the universe, Yarraka, that just hit a part of me, that I thought, I'll use that in a song one day, and Planet Country became that song.
You're talking about Dierks there before, and you've had the opportunity to work with some amazing people over the years, including Slim Dusty. Recording with Slim Dusty, that must have been, a marvellous time for you.
Mate, that was like legendary, We recorded at the same studio where we did the Boys from the Bush, which was 98 Glebe Point Road, and it was Cole Joy's studio. Went in there, and I remember when Slim arrived, he just arrived in a taxi on his own, walked across the road, and some old homeless person saw Slim coming, and this homeless person only had one leg and they were on crutches. I've never seen a man go so fast on a pair of crutches before. He bolted up there and he produced this guitar for Slim to sign. And anyway, Slim signed the guitar and went into the studio, and we recorded Leave Him in the Long Yard.
Wow. That homeless guy, if he ever gets near a computer and can put that thing up on eBay, he probably won't have to be homeless anymore.
Yeah.
That's a pretty amazing story, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
That he'd even have the guitar with him at the time.
Yeah. No, it was really huge of Slim, because I was just a young kid from Albury, wet behind the ears, and here I am standing in a studio next to the king of country music, and they just set up two mics. They put a Perspex screen between us, and we did it live in the studio, and man, that's a song I've been singing ever since then. Yeah, and it's a sort of bit of a way of paying tribute to the King.
Well, the King, exactly. What exactly was Slim's legacy?
Well, it was his music, and so, Slim lives on, in all of our hearts and minds, and the music is just, you still feel his presence in the country music industry is probably as strong as when he was living.
Mm. Is his career something that you'd aspire to follow down the path of, like get into your 80s and still be out there performing?
Well, I don't know if I'd ever be able to do that. That's why I say there's only one King. He's the man, but he sure has provided a lot of inspiration and a lot of great music, and it's great to be able to make music, and there's a whole lot of different influences that you draw upon when you're writing and you're recording. But back there, in your musical heritage, there's the Slim Dusty factor, and it's good to know that it's there, and from time to time you draw on it.
Mm. Who makes you starstruck?
Good-looking girls. Yeah, good-looking women.
Good-looking women with platinum albums behind their careers as well. Trisha Yearwood, you did a duet with?
Yeah, Garth and I were starstruck when we recorded with Trisha Yearwood. She came into the studio and to record a song with me, Gunda Windy Moon, on the Hacktown album. And just hearing Trisha sing, you realise that this is not just a singer. This is one of the all-time great vocalists that are on the planet, and so she blew us away. Incredible.
Yeah. Back to the point where we talk about my favourite songs off the album, not yours. Dirt is a song I love off this record. It's a real dirty, bluesy.
Yeah.
That's down to the ground, Lee Kernaghan, isn't it?
Well, I'll tell you something, mate. I did a show in Adelaide. I suppose it must have been a year ago. We were coming back late at night, and maybe it was because I was drinking at the time or whatever, but we parked on the way back to the hotel next to a sex shop. Now, I didn't go into the sex shop, right? Whatever people tell you, just don't believe it. But next to the sex shop is a shop called Dirt, and they sell all of this kind of raunchy gear, I guess. But I just liked the title Dirt, and I wrote that one down. And when it came to songwriting up in the shack, we started saying, okay, we've got to write a song about dirt. What's it going to be about? And obviously it's four-wheel driving, swags, girls, and I can't wait to make the video clip.
No, so that's obviously going to be a single.
I hope so. I think it'll good chance.
And I would imagine a great song to perform live.
Yeah, well, the song, what really got the song rocking and grooving was Gibson Les Paul Gold Top, plugged into a little Fender Princeton amp, and it's so grungy and just dirty, and this thing happens. And Matt Scullion, who co-wrote the album, he's got this thing with his guitars where he tunes down a whole tone. So he would have played that in E, but it was coming out in D, and it's fat.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah. On the album, you made mention of Tommy Kirkwood. Tell us the story of Tommy.
Yeah, well, Tommy was a little fella that I'd come to know over the years, and we'd talk often on the phone. But he was trying to fight the good fight against this damn cancer, and it was really wearing him down. And so I would have I spoke to him quite a lot in those last few months of his life, and I was making the album at the time, and I'd sing him, songs over the phone, because I knew that he may not be around when the album came out. I was hoping he would be, but anyway, so we had all these great times on the phone, and he loved I Milk Cows. Mm. He said, Lee, I just love that, I love it. And he called me the day before he passed on, and little Tommy Kirkwood, he lost his life, lost his battle with cancer the day before he turned 18. Mm. Real country boy through and through. So we dedicated that song to him on the album.
Yes, it still keeps coming back to that song, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The one he didn't want to put on the record.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's been good to catch up with you and hear the story of the new album Planet Country by Lee Kernaghan. We might hear a song.